benefit of having, by the calendar cycle, the earliest possible opening date of the gun season. And that puts it closer to the breeding season, and that elevates deer activity a little bit. And so we see this happen through the cycle. Actually, in 2024, we should be having the earliest possible opener, but because it's a leap year and what it does to the calendar and Thanksgiving, which generates the dates of the gun deer season, it's going to cycle back in 2024. So hunters should keep in mind that this is going to be the best opportunity with the gun season to have the opening weekend earlier and closer to the rut. And next year in 2024, it's going to fall back, essentially a week, which usually has about a 10 to 15% negative effect on total harvest. So we'll see how that plays out for us this year. But again, hunting conditions, I think, would have to be ideal again this year to match the harvest numbers we had last year. And another thing that has influence on this, and we've been tracking this for a number of years, and there's always interest in what is license sale trends. And as of the end of October, we're running about 2% behind where we were last year. And that's frankly been the norm for the last number of years. And what that is capturing is what has become pretty well known now, is that the baby boomer generation, who embraced deer hunting like no other generation before or after, is simply aging out and retiring from deer hunting. And as they are slowly and gradually, hanging up their blaze orange for the last time, we're just losing that couple of percent every year. And we know that's going to continue probably for the next decade. The other thing that's of interest is where are we at in the farmland part of the state as far as agricultural harvest. At the end of October, corn harvest was running just a couple days behind schedule. Not a surprise with the wet weather and the snow that eastern Wisconsin got in right at the end of the month probably slowed things down a little bit as well. And so that's an important factor in the farmland part of the state from a deer visibility standpoint, and what percent of the grain corn harvest is completed by gun deer season. So from a hunting perspective, we tend to think the more the better. So we wish farmers all the luck in the world with good conditions to help them get their corn off before opening weekend. And I think that's covered all the things I wanted to do to kind of set the table with expectations for this year. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Aaron Larson to speak more specifically about our chronic wasting disease considerations, and I'll be happy to answer questions towards the end of the briefing.
Thank you, Jeff. So as mentioned, my name is Aaron Larson. I'm the deer herd health specialist for the Wisconsin DNR, and CWD testing does still remain a priority for our state. Testing is available for deer harvested anywhere in the state. And we do have a map that has all the locations for options for hunters available on our website. So two of the main options are going to be a self-service kiosk where the hunter can bring in his or her deer and go through the steps themselves. Otherwise, we do have staff locations. And then we also do have options for if a hunter wants to have a Euromount done, they can make an appointment with a wildlife biologist, or we also have some instructions on sampling the lymph nodes yourself. So you would pick up a kit from a kiosk and then bring it back to us as well. So a few options, all of those are listed on our website on a map, as well as we do have a searchable database to look up by county or other variables like that. On that same map is our disposal options, more specifically, a lot of the dumpsters that we have available for deer carcass waste. So I want to encourage the hunters to check back frequently, as at this time of year, as it's starting to finally get cool, we have a lot more dumpsters being put out on the landscape, and there will still be more put out between now and the 9-day. But there will be a disposal option, and including a dumpster in every single county. So if a hunter wants to utilize that for their harvested deer waste, that would be an option for them. Another item I just want to mention is baiting and feeding. So again, the best resource for our hunters is available on our website with the keyword baiting and feeding. It'll pop you right to a page that has a map with the current regulations. There is one change, not for the 9-day, I want to specify, but for after the 9-day, due to a recent detection of a wild positive deer in Polk County, that county will have a baiting and feeding ban start December 1st of 2023. So after the 9-day, but certainly could be an impact for those hunting in later seasons after this one. So again, just wanted to share some of those resources that are available to our hunters. If you are successful in your hunt and getting a deer harvested and submitted for testing, you can find your results on our web pages as well under CWD results by putting in your barcode, or you'll get an email if you have an email on your Go Wild account, or you can look up the results in your Go Wild account as well. So a few options there for our hunters. So with that, I will pass it on to Warden Weber.
Thanks, Aaron. I'm Mike Weber, the Hunter Education Administrator. And obviously, with any type of hunting season, we want to wish hunters good luck and success, but that success starts with safety. The basis of all safety is following the 4 main rules of firearm safety, otherwise known as Tab K. So treat every firearm as if it were loaded. Always point your muzzle in a safe direction. Be sure of your target, what's before it and what's beyond it, and keep your finger out of the trigger guard until you're ready to shoot. So whether you're getting out there and hunting in a stand alone or getting together with friends and families as part of a deer drive, just make sure to always follow those 4 main rules of firearm safety. And really following and abiding by those rules is key to preventing those hunting incidents from occurring across the state. The other thing that we like to talk about, of course, is tree stand safety. Obviously, you don't want the first time that you're seeing your tree stand for the year to be that opening morning of the deer gun season. So prior to going out, whether you're storing your stand indoors or it's outside, really make sure to inspect your stand. Look at those straps and buckles, and if anything's frayed or you have any integrity issues with the stand, make sure to replace those parts and get those squared away. Obviously, anytime you're going up in a tree stand, whether it's a ladder stand, a climber, a hang-on tree stand, you want to wear that full body harness or safety harness and be tethered into the tree to prevent those falls from occurring. When you're going up in a tree stand and climbing up and down, always make sure to use 3 points of contact at all times, and then use a tether line to lower or raise and lower your unloaded firearm at all times, because you definitely don't want to be holding onto that while climbing up and down the tree. Another big safety thing throughout the deer gun season is obviously you want to be visible at all times. So whether you're hunting on public, private land, anytime you go out, make sure that at least 50% of your upper body, including your hat or head covering if worn, is that blaze orange or fluorescent pink. So again, make sure to take a look at your hunting clothes before you go out. And if they're faded, stained, need to be replaced, make sure to replace those and get new stuff, because you really want to be seen while you're out there. And again, never assume that you're the only hunter out there on a property. A lot of folks, obviously, too, this time of year are using ATVs and UTVs. Just make sure that, you're aware of where you're legally allowed to operate those. And of course, just like that safety equipment that we talked about with the tree stands, really important to be wearing that safety equipment on those ATVs and UTVs. So wearing your helmet, having your seat belt, and again, just following those safety rules while you're out there. Lastly, another major thing, there's obviously going to be a lot of hunters out there. And there may be some hunters that, witness some type of natural resources violation. And if that happens, make sure that they're aware that they can call in the DNR tip line. That number is, 1-800-TIP-WDNR or 1-800-847-9367. So again, just want to wish all hunters good luck this year, have a successful season, but that success really starts with being safe out there. So that's it for me. And I think we're going to be opening up to questions unless Katie had any additional information here.
No, you are absolutely correct, Mike. Thank you, all 3 of you. We do have time for that Q&A, as Mike had mentioned. So if you do have a question you'd like to ask, go ahead and raise your hand and I will go through and call on you to unmute. As we give everyone a moment to think about that, if questions come up later or you're watching this after the fact, we are recording. You can send us an email at dnrpress@wisconsin.gov, and we will help get you your questions answered. To kick us off, Mark, why don't you go ahead and unmute?
Hi, it's actually Zoe Chapala here with FOX6 News. I don't know why it's having under my assignment editor's name. I think it's because he registered for the meeting. But anyway, that doesn't even really matter. So I was hoping that you might be able just to give me an overview, like a condensed overview of what this firearms deer season forecast is going to look like.
All right, thanks, Joey, or Zoe, sorry. I'll get it right. Yeah, I would just, for me, expectations statewide, like as I said earlier, is we had really great conditions in 2022. And although the tendency is always to kind of compare what we do this year to last year and then grade it as better or worse, I'd be surprised if we match last year's harvest numbers. So I think it's safe to kind of couch expectations this year that harvest numbers are going to be similar to in some parts of the state and possibly running a little bit behind last year, but that's really going to be contingent on weather conditions. And we've seen this playing out over the past decade where actual harvest results, we used to be able to tie them pretty close to the deer population. In other words, the trend in the population usually foretold a trend in what the harvest results would be. But what we've really seen over the past decade or even more is that the actual hunting conditions that influence hunter behavior and influence the harvest. And so, we'll see what conditions are presented. But I think in general, we're going to see this year play out pretty similar to last year. But I wouldn't be surprised if our harvest numbers are running a little behind last year.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have Emerson. Emerson, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Jeff, I believe this one would be for you. As you mentioned, the numbers kind of continuing to decline over the years as the baby boomers begin to retire from hunting and whatnot. Can you just talk about any efforts the DNR is making to try and get younger generations interested in hunting and why it's important to keep those numbers up in terms of helping control the deer population and things of that nature? Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Emerson, for the question. And this has been recognized for over a decade that this is coming. And so in response to that, not just in Wisconsin but nationally, there's been an initiative or a movement that's referred to as R3. And this actually in Wisconsin, DNR is housed within our law enforcement program that Mike works with, but I've been associated with that for all the years of its development as well. And R3, the 3 R's stand for recruit new hunters, retain the hunters we have, and reactivate hunters that may have dropped out because of other things in their life and bringing them back in. And that's been going on, nationally for quite a while, recognizing that it is important and a robust, hunting culture and hunter participation has multiple benefits. One in the form of just that they are a major generator of support for conservation work through the revenue they generate in license sales and participation in conservation organizations and their advocacy for good conservation. So that in and of itself is important. And specific to our deer population, only about 15% of Wisconsinites, as big of a deal as this is in this state, there's still a minority of people in Wisconsin that do participate in deer hunting, but all Wisconsinites can be and are impacted by the trends in deer population. And in areas of the state, and it's been the issue for a number of decades, especially in the southern part of the state, in the farmland country where deer populations are productive, it's been a challenge to use hunting harvest to keep that population kind of in balance, both biologically with the natural landscape, but also in balance with human interests and the conflicts that can arise, whether it's crop damage or car, deer accidents on the roadway and other things like that. So what hunters do during the deer season, not only are they, doing this pursuit for their own enjoyment and recreation, but it does provide an ecological service to the ecology and to human interests. And so it is important to us. And so as we see the numbers, inevitably going to be dropping off a little bit. And 10 years from now, we're still going to have 500,000 deer hunters in Wisconsin. So it's still going to be a very robust, entity. But those that remain, will need to maybe change their mindset a little bit about appreciating both their role in their own personal pursuits and interests, but also what they're doing for the greater community as a whole. And we're just going to have to increase that discussion.
All right, thank you. Marcus, you are up next. You can go ahead and unmute, please.
Thanks. I think my question's best suited for Mike. Here in Sauk County, we've had a missing child case for like 5 months now, and he was last seen, police believe, in the woods. And I just wanted to know generally if hunters are out and about and they see something that could potentially be evidence or something that they think is suspicious, what do you recommend that they do?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, anytime I guess that a hunter would see something suspicious, like in your circumstance that you're talking about, obviously just remain there, know your location, and then contact law enforcement officials immediately to get someone out there to check that out and either confirm what they're seeing or not. So yeah, stay right there, know that location, and then contact law enforcement right away.
And does that happen a lot where they find something or come across something?
I guess I'm unsure of statistics. I've heard of circumstances where that's happened before. Again, I don't have numbers. I wouldn't say it's a frequent thing. But again, just knowing to contact law enforcement right away would be the best route.
All right. Susan, you are up next. You can go ahead and unmute, please.
Thank you. I would just like to get an overall health view of the deer population in its numbers and also in relationship to CWD. And then I just wanted a clarification. So hunters who do harvest a deer have the option of having that tested for CWD. It's not a requirement. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. It is not mandatory anywhere in the state to have your deer tested for CWD. We do have certain areas that we are targeting this year. That surveillance plan is available on our website and includes mostly the southern part of the state, kind of those central counties, Adams, Juneau, Portage, Wood, and then also focuses in the rest of the state around where we found captive or wild positives. So captive would be managed by DATCAP, but that farming industry, when there's a positive, we also do surveillance around those. But everywhere is available to hunters, even though we have areas that we are focused on. It is not mandatory even in those areas. So I guess, can you repeat what you're looking for in that first part of the question on the health with CWD?
Right. Just the current size of the deer population and in general where the herds stand in terms of CWD infection.
Sure. So the prevalence or percent of the population that would test positive for CWD varies extremely across the state. We do have areas in the south where we would say that CWD is endemic now. I would say that Iowa, Richland, Sauk are some of those counties where we do have much higher prevalence rates or percentages of positives. We do have some graphs on our website that show some areas where we have been tracking it throughout the years and show what that percentage is. And most of those areas are in the south. One of our greatest tools with CWD is to try to reduce the risk of additional deer-to-deer contact. Of course, that's going to occur naturally, but trying to discourage that. And ways we can do that is by lower deer populations and baiting and feeding. Those regulations is another way to reduce that artificial congregation. So we do have available on our website as well the number of deer that have tested positive each year. This year we've had 145 so far. That's out of just over 2,000 deer. Actually, 2,000 deer have been sampled. We don't have all the results back for those. So just over 1,800 deer that we have the results back for. We've had 145 positives. The majority of those are still in the south, but there has been, I mentioned polk. That is one that will cause a baiting and feeding ban. So that was announced yesterday. Trempealeau also had a positive in the wild herd, a wild deer detection. That was also announced yesterday. As well. Does that answer the question, or am I still missing the main gist here?
No, that's really helpful. Thanks.
And if I could, I would also like to weigh in on this concept of herd health, because sometimes that is referenced to not just clinically and disease related, but is the herd healthy, i.e., is there an abundance of deer and are they reproducing at a high rate so that there can be lots of deer? And that is a eye in the eye of the beholder type of a thing, because if you objectively were going to say, is the herd healthy in the farmland portion of Wisconsin, the answer might be no, that the herd is not healthy, because the herd abundance, the density of animals on the landscape, is really higher than desired, or higher than it should be. And that's been a challenge in the farmland part of the state for 20 years. And so, again, as I mentioned earlier, the hunter can have it's a win-win relationship to go out, be successful if you can be, and then but also know you're doing well for the herd, but that by actually reducing it somewhat. Now, that message doesn't resonate well with everyone, because the challenge is deer are very unevenly distributed on the landscape. And although we probably have more deer on the landscape of Wisconsin now than we may have ever had in history, they're not evenly distributed. And so the story in the northern forest plays out differently than in the farmland. But even in the northern forest, because of uneven distribution of deer, there are areas where the deer densities are probably too high and they're negatively impacting their own habitat. But you're going to find other areas where deer densities are quite low. And so that kind of a message isn't going to resonate with a lot of hunters. And even in the farmland, again, animals very unevenly distributed. And just the general enthusiasm of deer hunting in Wisconsin, the fact that we have over 600,000 people trying to participate, that means probably tens of thousands of us are trying to have that experience in areas that are, less than optimal as far as the best places. And so we've got the whole spectrum of experience. So is the herd healthy? One could argue that densities are too high, but in areas of the state where that is not the case, and so hunters, it's going to self-correct, where hunters will make their decisions based on what they're seeing. But the message here is, in those areas where deer densities are high and hunters have the opportunity, it's a win-win for the deer themselves and us to probably ramp up our harvest rates. And that comes in the form of increasing antlerless harvest, which has been our message to farmland deer hunters, frankly, for about 20 years now.
Thank you for that, Jeff. Danielle Kading, you are next. Feel free to unmute.
Thank you very much. Jeff, you kind of answered my question a little bit there, but just speaking about like the differences across the state, I think last year the harvest was up 20 to 30% in the central and northern portion. And you said the northern part of the state was running 30% behind about that on archery. So would you expect that to be the same for the 9-day gun deer season, or like what are your expectations, for different regions of the state as far as hunter success?
Sure. So thanks, Danielle. In the northern part of the state, I think is where we see the most variation. And because of the way winter played out last year, we had really severe winter in the form of extreme snow depths in the northwest. So if you look at northern Wisconsin and you kind of graded from east to west, I think the further west and the further north you're hunting, i.e. Iron and Ashland, Douglas, Washburn, those counties, they're probably set up to see the highest impact from last winter, and that depression and kill this year relative to last year will probably be a little stronger there. On the other hand, on the eastern side, Florence County, northern Marinette County, Forest County, they kind of avoided that severe winter situation. And we're seeing that in the archery harvest, where actually Florence County is running a little bit ahead of last year. I think it's the only northern county that's the case. But Forest County and Marinette, not depressed as much as the Northwest. And so I think we'll see that play out during the gun season as well. The central forest counties like Wood and Jackson and Clark and portions of those counties, Adams, Juneau, it's been pretty stable there for quite some time, and I think that stability is going to persist. So expectations, again, very similar. And then the farmland we've been talking about, the interest in the farmland simply, and it's been this way for a long time, is how can we maximize antlerless deer harvest on a grand scale relative to the buck harvest and relative to previous years. And so the opportunity will probably be there. It's just a matter of the conditions that will keep hunters out in the woods and where they're at in terms of their capacity in freezer space, frankly, and their needs and their interest in harvesting deer. That'll drive it more than deer numbers on the landscape.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, Jake Force, you are up next. Feel free to unmute.
Thank you guys so much for doing this. I think this will make this would be good to get out to all of the people. So I have just one quick thing first, and then kind of a bigger question. Jeff, I guess my first thing would be for you. I'm up in Rhinelander, Newswatch 12 in Rhinelander, and just kind of if you have any specific forecasting details for Oneida County, what you guys are expecting from up here. And then, Mike, I think my second thing would probably be for you, just as far as, you kind of emphasized if you see something, say something. What are some of the common violations that you would tell people to watch out for, whether malicious or not? And just, how can people stay out of trouble?
All right, thanks, Jake. I'll take that first part as it relates specifically to Oneida County. For the most part, Oneida County dodged that severe winter last year. It did influence western Vilas County and might have caught the far western part of Oneida, but there was a pretty hard break off in terms of that snow depth. And so for the most part, Oneida may not see as much influence. However, Oneida is one of those counties where there's quite a bit of disparity in deer density within the county from east to west. And in general, western side of the county, deer densities are lower, eastern side, they're higher. The Deer Advisory Council for Oneida County this past year, kind of in deference to the western side of the county, did trim down their antlerless permit availability for Oneida County. So again, aside from conditions, we'll probably expect harvest numbers to come in a little lower for Oneida County. And it'll be interesting. Vilas County did not lower their numbers, harvest opportunity with antlerless permits. So that'll be an interesting comparison at the end of the season to see how those two strategies played out.
Yeah, it's Mike here, and I can address, I guess, the second part of your question. I guess we always like to recommend people, prior to getting out there. I guess if you're wondering about a certain regulation or don't know, obviously ask before you go out and try and find that answer before. So we do post, on our DNR website, we've got the hunting regulations for this year. Those are up. And then obviously we also have a customer service number that folks can contact with additional questions. But obviously, again, if they're wondering before getting out there, check first. As far as, I guess, common violations during the deer gun season, some typical common things that field wardens will encounter are folks forgetting to unload their firearms, before placing them in vehicles. So transporting, loaded firearms or having those in the vehicles. So again, make sure to unload those. Hunting too close to a road or shooting from a road. Obviously, you got to be at least 50 feet from the road center prior to hunting or discharging a firearm. Blaze orange, anytime folks are engaged in hunting, obviously make sure to be wearing that blaze orange or fluorescent pink. And then obviously too, before going out, want to remind people to make sure to check your deer hunting license, make sure you have that license before going out. And then if you are successful, don't forget to register that deer. So deer obviously have to be registered by 5 p.m. the day after harvest. Really easy way to do that. You can go right in online, enter in all that information. It's a pretty quick and easy process, but those are probably, some common violations as far as, some of the firearm stuff we talked about. And then, folks forgetting to register deer as well.
Thank you, Mike. And just to quickly add to that, Folks can also feel free to reach out to us on social media to verify answers to their questions as it relates to regulations and more as well. Barry, you can go ahead and unmute yourself as well here.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff. Barry Adams from the Wisconsin State Journal in Madison. Hey, you talk about the disparity of deer throughout the state. Are we seeing a correlation of hunters choosing not to go to the Northwoods and maybe sticking closer to home in the southern parts of the state? Is that happening or not? Oh, I think you're muted there, Jeff.
Jeff, you're muted still.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Thanks, Barry. Yeah, we have certainly seen that, and we've tracked that through a mail survey that we provide to 10,000 hunters at the end of the season every year. And one of the things we're asking them is where and how often they hunted. And through that survey, we've seen the total days of effort of gun deer hunting in the northern forest decline by about 40% actually since the turn of the century. And that is reflecting, I think, a couple of things. It is expanded opportunity in the farmland portion of the state, and so hunters are hunting closer to home. And it is that generational thing that when baby boomers came into hunting, going up north was the thing to do. It was where the opportunity best presented itself, and the tradition of the northern deer camps, which I love myself and the nostalgia of that. But the reality is the following generations found better opportunities closer to the home. And so we've just seen that adjustment culturally. And, hunters, some would say, well, the opportunities aren't as good as they used to be in the north. And there's truth to that as well for a number of reasons that, the heyday of deer densities, was, in the last part of the previous century, and it carried into this one a little bit, but it's not the same experience. And so we're just seeing that adjustment over time.
And just a quick follow, Jeff. And then I missed the beginning of your presentation. My apologies. What's the corn harvest like in the South? And what is that? I mean, they're just getting going with corn right now. How is that going to impact the hunt?
Yeah, corn harvest in terms of the lack of standing corn being good from a deer hunting perspective. I checked the end of October status for the state, and we're running just a couple days behind average on grain corn harvest, and so it was at like 35%. This wet weather or the snow that we had, at least in eastern Wisconsin, is probably not going to help them get caught up, at least in that part of the state. And so, yeah, over the next 2 weeks, that's one of the things I know farmland deer hunters will be watching intently, and we're wishing farmers good luck in terms of good conditions to get that corn off.
Thanks.
All right. If anyone has any additional questions, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, again, if you have questions that come up later today or between now and the start of that gun deer season, please feel free to email us at dnrpress@wisconsin.gov, and we will get those questions answered for you. Jake, I do see you raise your hand. Go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, I mean, I know that for you guys, like, this may seem like a silly question, but I'm from New England. I've never really done any hunting in my life. Why is this season so short? And I mean, it probably for, managing the ecosystem, the population, whatever. It's really, I mean, I think I heard that it's only 9 days. Just why so short?
Yeah, thanks, Jake. That's a great question. Because it's been that way for so long that people would say, well, that's just the way it is. Well, so the origin of that is for decades and decades and decades, gun deer hunting was the thing in Wisconsin. And again, hundreds of thousands of people participate. The timing of the season originally was set up to occur after the breeding season for deer is over. So, now we're in the peak of the breeding season. Deer are more vulnerable, and at the time we didn't want to expose the deer to harvest when they're most vulnerable, and so the season was placed after that. And so it's part of it is just tradition and culture, and we have proposed changing or expanding the gun deer season, and this is a public engagement process, and it's a reflection of what the public desires. And every time that issue has been brought up, it quickly gets shut down because people really do embrace this tradition of the 9 days of gun deer hunting. And to a certain degree, the intensity of it all happening at one time does benefit hunters by just the general activity level that happens. It actually helps causes deer to move more during daylight hours because of hunting pressure, which does provide opportunity. Now, in response to that, though, what we have seen over the past 20 years is hunters' enthusiasm for deer hunting has expanded to the point where they're not only firearm deer hunters, but they are archery deer hunters as well. And so we don't just have this 9-day deer season in Wisconsin. The deer season as a whole started in the middle of September, and it goes till the end of December, and in some cases, the end of January. And over half of our deer hunters now, so I mentioned earlier, we're at about 600,000 deer hunters in Wisconsin. Over 300,000 of them purchase an archery license in addition to firearm. And so over half of our deer hunters are hunting outside of that 9-day period and pursuing their interests, and have been now for a month and a half.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. With that, I don't see any other hands raised. We will go ahead and wrap it up. Again, one last time, if additional questions come up now, today, later next week, anytime before that season, please feel free to email us at dnrpress@wisconsin.gov. We will work with these guys to get you answers. Thank you again for tuning in this morning, and have a great day.